Is there any chance the Buffalo Bills of 2023 are the Toronto Blue Jays of 2023? And how we think that they're really good and they're going to frustrate the heck out of us for the rest of the season, Mike?
I suppose. I mean, the Bills are one of these teams, at least in a sort of a football context, that we've seen before. Andy Reid with the Eagles or Peyton Manning with the Colts. It's been 3 to 4 really great seasons coming into this season for the Bills. And they don't have even a conference championship yet. And that happens. I mean, it's hard to win. You've got other great teams and great quarterbacks. So there are causes, but for me anyway, it hasn't revealed a flaw about the Bills. I don't know whether this applies to the Blue Jays. You could tell me, but in terms of the Bills, like the roster is good, quarterback's good, coaching staff is good. My opinions. Let's get to the playoffs, and then you've just got to. I mean, it's cliche-ish, but you've just got to execute there. You've got to get the so-called bounces, and that determines your legacy as a team and an organization. And that's what's in front of the Bills now. I don't know if Blue Jay fans necessarily were like, let's just wait to the playoffs and see what happens, because they were never somewhat of a lock to make it. The Bills aren't a lock, but it would be a pretty big story if they didn't. Certainly going into the season, that was true. They just have to have it go right. And injuries are such a variable
Right.
that you can't control in that too. And that's been somewhat of a challenge for them already. So I think the regular season is where we are, and you have to get to the playoffs. But entirely, this team's whatever the judgment on this team waits until the playoffs happen.
I have a tough time discussing Sunday's game because I would be saying the same things had they lost. It was one of those games that, you know, the result almost didn't matter in terms of the analysis of what happened, and the analysis of what happened wound up, you know, dissecting and criticizing what the Giants did with 2 plays at the end of the half and the end of the game. So if I'm a Bills fan, I move on as if it never happened, and think it doesn't change the fact that their fortunes still depend on road games at Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Kansas City, and Miami, and that's tough. And a home game against Dallas, and maybe the Jets. And how about this week, Mike? The last thing you might want is another 2 TD favorite game, but it's New England. I got to think that's a good thing.
You know, it probably is. There's the specter of the Patriots over the years, and Bill Belichick's ability to confuse an offense is, I mean, everybody knows about it. He hasn't really confused Josh Allen too often, though. It's been a few years of Bills Patriots games, and Allen has had some of his best days, a historically good day in the playoffs when it was literally 0 degrees out against New England. So you want to be able to trust the Bills offense. There were worrisome signs on Sunday night, though, and really the question, I think that's the leading question about their offense is what comes after Stephon Diggs? I mean, Diggs is crushing again this season, but they really have not found, whether it's on the ground or another receiver or Dalton Kincaid, like they've really not found a reliable plan B, if you will, on offense. The New England offense has been so bad. They're averaging 12 points a game, and the Bills are averaging almost 29. But on the road against the Patriots, it's never comfortable. I guess I'll just speak for myself on that. It's never comfortable.
You have to be enjoying Bill Belichick's failure right now, though, right?
I'd admit to some of that. He's been such a sort of evil empire figure for the Bills franchise for many NFL franchises. He's sitting there with 299 wins. Yeah, I would have to admit that. I would say that on the air. Like, I'm enjoying New England's struggles, and I'm very curious to see what they do next. I mean, is this a Patriots season where they just lose every week? Like they're 1-5 and they've got tough games ahead too. And starting with this one, they're in Miami next week. How bad does it get? And what happens if it doesn't change? I mean, it's Belichick. Like, you have this in sports sometimes where a coach is of course, a Hall of Famer and one of the best ever. But then it happened to Don Shula, I think, maybe, where you get to a point that the questions are asked about whether it's time for a change. And that's a very complicated situation that they might be on the verge of there.
Let me ask you a question that I'm guessing you can't answer because it would be confidential information within the Bills organization. But how banged up do you think Josh Allen might be?
Well, you're right. I don't know that answer, but he's not 100%. I mean, he came out of that game, went right to the X-ray room. Today, Wednesday morning, as we speak, Wednesday afternoon is when we get the update on injuries for a team playing on Sunday. So there'll be, this afternoon, there'll be some update on Allen. He's not going to miss time though, right? Like he got his injury last year in that Jet game should have kept him out for a couple of games. And I think that was kind of thought at the time, like from what we knew about that injury, don't play, let's get you right. And then he plays and the season ends abruptly against Cincinnati. And one of the narratives all offseason was, well, he had an injury, so it's possible that there's something that they'll have learned from that. And, you mentioned, rightly, they're tough games on the schedule, but they also have New England, 9-point favorite. Tampa is here next week. Denver is here. Like they have games on their schedule kind of in this stretch where they might think if he needs time that they'd want to give it to him. Not usually what happens. And Allen might have forced his way into games last year after his elbow thing. So we'll find out today if there's anything to be worried about.
Well, what's missing are rushing yards and design plays where, there are 3 blockers and here comes Josh Allen to run for 21 yards. That is just not happening, and that's not by accident, right?
That's right.
He's just not supposed to be running unless he absolutely has to, and so that part of the offense is gone. And that part of the offense was always a big part of the offense.
Absolutely right. That was their best play. As soon as Allen sort of took hold as their starting quarterback, I was always saying that their best play is when he runs. And you are absolutely correct. It is not an accident that this year they are taking that away from him when he is getting out on a scramble and he's sliding. Like they have maybe really muted him in this way. And I don't know that he loves that necessarily, but you can understand the thinking, to protect him a little bit. It's always been kind of a problem for me. I mean, you take that Giant game, how well protected did he seem just because he didn't run 4 times or 5 times in that game? He got hit in that game anyway. So there's only so much you can control there. They running the ball is uneven. Kincaid has not happened yet meaningfully. Everything else about their offense is kind of the same. And they took out a dimension, this one you mentioned, that was really useful for them. So I don't know where that leaves them or whether that will change soon. I think it changes once they get into December and January. They're not going to leave that out of their offense, I would assume. I would hope. But for now, you're right. It has not been a part of what they are.
But with all the injuries, even on the defensive side, is there more concern when the Bills have the ball or the other team has the ball?
That's an interesting question. That might vary week to week. When I'm playing the Giants and the Patriots, I think I can say I'm not too concerned when I'm on defense, as that Giant game may have proved. They have had challenges on defense last year too, with Micah Hyde going out and Poyer and different injuries, and they were still top 3. I mean, Sean McDermott has really excelled with that defense, and so far so good this year too. Like they have really just not. Jacksonville maybe is the closest exception. Who's really moved the ball? Miami did move the ball. They're doing that on everybody. That's actually still a good day compared to other Miami games this year. I think offense is going to decide whether you win a Super Bowl, just like we've had in the last decade or more in this league. Defense is fine, but the great quarterbacks have been able to overcome. Even though this year scoring is down, I predict that still happens this year. And those other questions about the Bills on offense have to be answered for them to win big, I think.